Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for July 15th, 2021. If you are joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting. However, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take any questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. And with that, let's begin with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Seal,
Here.
Commissioner Casanelli,
Here.
Commissioner Grove,
Here.
Commissioner Lorcher, here, Commissioner Yearsley,
Here.
Commissioner McCarville.
Here.
Absent is Commissioner Wheeler.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We have Heron Village Expansion H-2021-0027. That will be open only for the sole purpose of continuing this item. So if there's anybody here tonight to testify on that particular application, we will not be taking testimony this evening. So could I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Madam
moved.
Chair,
Oh,
my apologies. Point of order. There is a correction to item number 1. Oh, excuse me. I'm out of order. I'll take a moment and let you do your job. My apologies.
So moved.
it has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda. And the consent agenda, we have 3 items. And the first item, we do have a typographical error, and that would be the approval of the minutes for the July 1st meeting, obviously not the July 15th meeting, which is today. For planning and zoning. We also have findings of fact, conclusions of law for Da Vinci Park drive-through H-2021-0037 and Orchard Park Pad C drive-through H-2021-0039. So can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I would like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. The staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward and present their case and respond to the staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who signed up on our website in advance to testify. If you're here in person, please come forward. If you are on Zoom, you will be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen and our clerk will run the presentation. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on a topic, you may press raise hand button on the Zoom app. Or if you're only listening on the phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, a computer and a phone, for example, please be sure to mute those extra devices so we will not experience feedback and can hear you clearly. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make a final decision or recommendations to City Council as needed. So with that, we'd like to open the public hearing on H-2021-0027 Heron Village Expansion. And they are requesting a continuance to, I believe, September, what did we say, 16th?
Requesting for the 2nd, but I don't believe we'll have a quorum.
Yeah, we're probably not going to have that meeting. So the 16th is the next available meeting. So can I get a motion to continue? Do we have any staff comments, or does the applicant have any comments on this one?
I was talking to Bill. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Do we have any staff comments on the continuance for H-2021-0027?
No, ma'am. 16th is fine.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to continue?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Seal. Thank you.
I move to continue file number H 2021-0027 Huron Village expansion to the hearing date of September 16th, 2021.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue H-2021-0027 to September 16th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is H-2021-0024 Wells Street Assisted Living and Andorra subdivision, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Alan Tiefenbach, Associate Planner with the City of Meridian. This is a proposal for an annexation, a zoning to traditional neighborhood R, a preliminary plat, and a conditional use permit. The property is 17.5 acres of land. It's zoned RUT in the county. It's located at the southwest corner of East Magic View Drive and South Wells Street. Here are the maps you can see. So to the north, East Magic View Road, that's R8 zoning, mostly assisted living to the north there. To the east, South Wells Street, that is zoned RUT and LO. To the south is East Wells Circle, and that is zoned LO, and there's currently office buildings there. To the west is zoned R1 in the county, and that is existing single-family residential, which I'll talk about shortly. A little bit about the history of this. There was a similar proposal that was approved for these properties in April of 2020. It was called Andorra Senior Living. This proposal included 76 single-family residences and a 3-story apartment building with 88 dwelling units. Following the council meeting and the approval, the property owners of a parcel to the left, which was part of this, it was 972 East Wells Circle. They decided they weren't interested in selling the property, which basically made the what was approved fall apart. So what you're seeing now is a new redesigned development, and it also no longer contains that parcel that was with the original one. The summary of this request is its annexation and zoning of 17.5 acres of land with the TNR zone district. It's a preliminary plat. That would be the north, I'll call it half, even though it's not really half. The northern portion, 61 building lots and 8 common lots. That's about 11.5 acres. There's a conditional use to allow a 91 unit, 3-story nursing and residential care building with a footprint of 30,000 square foot. So 3 stories. And I'll show you the graphics. There's also a proposal for an additional roughly 9,000 square foot commercial building, although the end user has not been identified. There were a few administrative requests. One of them was to allow 61 private lots to be served by a gated community, whereas only 50 are allowed. And as I'll talk about, 32 of the required parking spaces will be provided in bulb outs, which again, I'll show you. So I'm going to sort of run through this proposal with the graphics and try to explain this to you. Again, the applicant proposes to develop the northern part of the site with 61 single-family lots, a 91 unit, 3-story assisted living memory care building, and possibly a 9,000 square foot office. Within the nursing and residential care facility, the applicant proposes a restaurant, spa, salon, multi-purpose movie theater, lounge, library, crash, and other spaces to serve the residents of this facility. The portion of the property proposed for a single family detached, which is what you're seeing here. So I have kind of an overview on the right there to show the whole site. And then I zoomed in to on the left there so you can sort of see which part I'm talking about. The portion of this property proposed for the detached single family residences is directly adjacent to the established Snorting Bull subdivision. That's what the actual subdivision is called, although it's also referenced as Woodbridge. And that's to the west. That subdivision would be roughly over here. This adjacent subdivision is comprised of lots of approximately 5,500 to 6,500 square feet in area. There are 16 existing houses in this subdivision, and these houses are approximately 42 to 45 feet in width. The applicant proposes 21 houses of approximately 32 feet in width and lot sizes of 4,000 square foot. With 61 houses on 11.7 acres, this is approximately 5 dwelling units per acre. The comprehensive plan recommends 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre for this area. So this is somewhat in the middle of what the density would be designated. At staff's recommendation, the applicant, so one of the things we wanted to make sure is that what they're proposing is compatible with the existing single family residences to the west. Staff had a few recommendations to the applicant, and the applicant made a few other things. So one of our recommendations is that we wanted them to stagger the houses so that the neighbors wouldn't be looking at this wall of houses. And that's what you can see here. They're staggering the setbacks between 27 feet and 12 feet. That's what you can see here, again, to try to eliminate that wall. The other thing they're doing is that they're varying the height of these buildings. If you can see this graphic, the lighter shade is the 1 stories, the darker shade is the 2 stories. So the larger houses are 1 story closer to the western residences. The smaller houses, for instance, this one you see here, are all 2 stories. So again, this was done both to provide visual relief and to help to reduce the visual impacts. One other thing that is new that the Planning Commission has not seen is the original version of this, and the staff report that went out to the Planning Commission showed these houses having 3-foot setbacks from the property line. That's the requirement of the TNR zoning district. For a few different reasons, including trying to be a little more compatible with the adjacent residences, the applicant has actually increased that. So now they're proposing 5-foot side setbacks, which would be 10-foot wide between houses. If you measure the houses to the west, roughly they're around that same, between 10 and 12 feet apart. So this is trying to become more compatible with the existing single family residential. So because the increase in setbacks, the 5-foot setbacks for each house was not with the original staff report, staff is recommending an additional condition of approval, and I'll come back to this at the end. And this condition of approval would be on the development agreement, requiring that the properties along the west, the ones adjacent to the subdivision, that they maintain a 5-foot side setback. Okay, so here's the south half, which really isn't half. This includes 91 assisted living and memory care units with supporting retail, restaurant, entertainment uses, and a 30,000 square foot footprint. The proposed development, what they're doing here does meet the goals of the comprehensive plan, which talks about mixed use and neighborhood designation. But one caution that staff would have is the original version of this that came in when they did their notification and their neighborhood meeting was what you're being presented with tonight. 61 residential units, assisted living and memory care on the bottom southeast corner, and an office or a commercial building in the middle. Since that time, the applicant contacted staff asking about whether or not the southwest part could contain a multifamily project instead. Staff told the applicant that that was not what this was noticed as. If they wanted to do multifamily, then this would be required to do a new community meeting. They would have to re-notice this. The Planning Commission hearing would be rescheduled, basically a whole new application. With that explanation, the applicant said, never mind, we've figured it out. We're going to move forward with this proposal as it is. That's okay, but the one concern that staff does have is that TNR is one of the few zone districts that actually allows multifamily by right, meaning that it would not have to go through a conditional use if it was zoned to TNR. To make sure that what is being presented here tonight is what would be approved if the Planning Commission were inclined to do that, staff has recommended and has added a recommendation that the development agreement would say that the only use allowed here in the southeast corner would be nursing and residential care. If they wanted to do anything else, then they would have to amend the DA and go back through a public hearing. They're required to provide 10% open space, which is about 1.1 acres of property. They've provided an exhibit here. They're providing 22.6, and they have this exhibit that they're showing here is open space that meets what the dimensional requirements are per our code. So again, they're providing twice as much open space as they would be required. They're required to have one amenity with this development. They're proposing at least 9, depending on how you count it. That would be a central open space, 4,300 square foot clubhouse, swimming pool, hot tub, pickleball court, horseshoe pit, and a dog park, as well as numerous pathways across the development. And what you can see through the middle is sort of this central green space corridor. Although not required, because this is nursing and memory care and they don't have to provide an amenity, they are. So the nursing and residential care facility shows a sizable open space, an internal courtyard, a few different ball courts, a picnic gazebo, and a community garden. There's an informal 10-foot wide pathway stubbed at the west subdivision line. So over here, there's kind of an informal pathway that's there, has not been developed. The Meridian Pathways plan shows eventually that there'd be a future multi-use pathway that would connect to this. The concept plan as shown does actually show a direct connection. So again, this is where that would be, and they've provided basically a direct east-west connection to this. There's portions of this pathway that are close to 10 feet wide here, but it narrows down to probably 5 or 4 feet here. Staff is recommending, because this is eventually going to be a major pathway, that all of this would have to be built to a template of 10 feet wide to be consistent with the pathway plan. Also, what's important to note is that the pathway plan actually shows the pathway running along 5 Mile Creek, which is here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this piece of property here with the original proposal that was approved, this was part of that proposal. This no longer is part of this proposal, no longer under the applicant's control. So we're not sure if and when this would develop. If it did develop and come into the city, then we would recommend that the alignment of this pathway would be matching the plan, meaning coming down this pathway, or sorry, coming down the 5 Mile Creek. However, in the interim, the applicant is also providing this stub here. And if and when this was ever developed, then this pathway would no longer provide the major pathway. It would be running along 5 Mile Creek to be consistent with what the original configuration is. So again, staff is also recommending that that segment be built to a 10-foot wide template as well. And in the interim, it would just sort of loop around the commercial lot here. In addition to that, the conceptual development plan shows detached sidewalks and pathways, providing designated pedestrian access between all the single-family residences, the central amenity in the office building. When we were going through the designs, again, this is somewhat conceptual in nature, and the more specified dimension things would happen at the time of the final plat, when you see the final plat landscape plan. The plans indicate that they're required to have an 8-foot wide parkway along all of the streets in this development, including the internal streets. It may not, based on these plans, what we're seeing, it may not meet those. But again, the applicant is aware of this, and if and when this goes to public hearing for a final plat, we'll be reviewing the landscape plans to make sure that all of the minimum requirements and the minimum landscaping requirements are met. Access to this development is proposed from the adjacent local streets, which is East Magic View Drive, South Wells Street, and East Wells Circle. For internal connectivity, the applicant is providing a gated community. So this whole area here, all 61 lots would be gated. And they would consist of alleys and private streets. There is an existing unnamed ACH right-of-way, which you can see down here as East Gentry Circle. ACHD originally were requiring them to build the whole thing out, including the cul-de-sac. The latest version of this that I just received from ACHD today is just because the applicant has limited control over this whole area. They're only requiring them at this point now to just stub it to the western property line. The code states that a gated development shouldn't have more than 50 dwelling units. As I mentioned, the northern part has 61 dwelling units. This is because the homes are clustered around a central open space. We've got additional corridors in here and many different pathways. Although it is feasible to restrict the number of gated lots to 50, the development is intended to be a walkable neighborhood with homes clustered, like I said, and it even has mews, which is one of the intents of the private streets section of the code. Because of this, because of the clustering, because of the amount of open space, because fire and PD did not express any issues with this, Staff did not have any concerns with the extra 11 lots. This is something that the planning director approved through alternative compliance. So if this were to go forward, that would have already been approved by the planning director. It's important to note that there's been some changes to this concept plan since the staff report went out. The one that you saw in the staff report was an older version. There's been a few versions that are in the case file. So if you've been on the online case file recently, there's many, many different versions. But what has changed is that the original plan had if you can see my pointer, the version of the plan that went out with the staff report, there was a house that was here. This road down here was an alley, and there was an additional private road here. A couple of different things happened. Staff noted that we had some issues with this long block length. They're limited to the lengths of blocks, and we thought there should be some sort of connection. So the applicant has since provided this little park and this trail connection here. The house that was here has now been moved to the south of the clubhouse and swimming pool. The other issue was that the applicant says there was some problems with addressing off of the alley that was here. This alley has now been converted to a private street so that addressing can happen. And the street that was originally here is now gone away. So they've lost one street and they've increased some of their green space here, and they've provided a trail connection here. If the planning commission were inclined to recommend approval and approve the conditional use tonight, staff would recommend by reference that the most recent version concept plan, which would be July 13th, would be part of that, as you're seeing right now. Last thing I want to talk about is parking. So single family residential portion of this development proposes 61 houses with 3 or more bedrooms, and this requires, per our code, 244 parking spaces, 4 parking spaces per house, basically. 2 of them would have to be covered, and then 2 of them could be in a driveway. All of the number of parking spaces are being provided, although the applicant has proposed that 32 of these be provided in bulb outs. So you can see a bulb out here, you can see one here. There's a few down here. There's some here. They've provided a parking plan showing that they have all these parking spaces. And this is something, again, that could be approved administratively through alternative compliance. The director did approve this alternative compliance. The reason why, again, is because of the number of open space, the clustered units, the amount of pathways. It was either support this or have them redesign, make the driveways longer, and possibly lose some of the open space. So the parking is there. It's just not, some of it is across the street or directly adjacent to the houses and not directly on the houses. One thing I do want to mention, though, is that the 244 parking spaces that I mentioned, they don't account for this clubhouse and down here. They're required to provide, based on the commercial requirements, 9 parking spaces. That's one of our conditions of approval. When we look at this plan, we think it's feasible. The applicant can carve out an additional 9 parking spaces. That is one of the conditions of approval that has been included with the staff report. For a nursing and residential care facility, the parking requirement is a half a parking space per bed. This concept plan indicates 102 beds requiring 51 parking spaces. They've shown 101 parking spaces. And with the office building, 18 would be required, and they're showing 40 on this concept plan. Giving you just sort of a brief view of the single family residences. This is the assisted living. This came out later. A couple of weeks ago, they provided the most recent elevations of the office per request by staff. We just generalizing now, if and when this is approved, they'll have to do a certificate of zoning compliance for anything that's commercial, and they'll have to go through design review. Looking at the assisted living, just from guesstimating and eyeing, it's probably getting pretty close to meeting the requirements of the architectural standards manual. Not so much probably with the ones on the left. I think this is just more conceptual than the ones at the top. However, either way, just so you know, at the time of CZC, we'll make sure that both of these buildings meet the minimum standards that are required for design review and for the certificate of zoning compliance. At the time of the staff report going out, staff received 2 letters of testimony. The concerns that we received were increase in traffic, the potential height of houses, the narrowness of the side setbacks of the houses adjacent to Westbridge or Snorting Bowl subdivision. Since staff noted that the plans have been updated numerous times since the written testimony has come out, there's been a bit of discussion between staff and at least one of the adjacent neighbors about some of the questions and some of the concerns. I have not heard anything directly and have not seen any written testimony since the letters that we've received since that time. So I'm not sure if those concerns are outstanding or not, but I'm sure we'll hear tonight. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use to allow the nursing and residential care facility. And just to mention that a separate conditional use may be required for the additional commercial building based on what the end user finally is figured out to be. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the annexation zoning to TNR and plat for 61 lots, a 9-to-1 unit nursing and residential care and additional office building. In addition to the conditions in the staff report, staff recommends a condition to the development agreement that the side setback for all lots on the western perimeter adjacent to the subdivision be increased to 5 feet. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission include with their motion the updated concept plan dated July 13th, 2021 in their motion. And at that, I'll stand for any questions or concerns.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Should be able to control this now from there, Jamie.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, sorry, I got the wrong one here. See, that's not what I have.
Jamie Koenig.
Yeah, you have to get real close to him. Sorry.
Is this better?
Where's that?
Much.
Thumb drive.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Jamie Koenig with Babcock Design Group.
Thumb drive.
Address is 800 West Main, downtown. Thank you, Alan, for doing such a fantastic job of running through everything and summarizing this. You covered practically everything I wanted to touch on, so I'll try not to repeat anything that you've already covered. But one of the main things I'd like to say as an architect, occasionally you run across a developer that cares about the same thing most of us care about, including myself.
Pull it right close.
Sorry,
Yeah.
would like to do things the right way. They have an interest in the same things that most of us have an interest in, such as open space that's quality, amenities, having a site plan that's well thought through, elevated design for the architecture, interesting materials and design that kind of, when you manage to successfully pull all of that off all at once, it kind of falls into place and becomes a very nice experience for everybody, a sense of place, something that people that live there can be proud of, people that visit won't be interested in, and people that pass by as well. That doesn't always happen. So I think we're very lucky because of that. Brent, the developer, is that type of person. He's very much in line with how we like to see things done. We feel that this project fits in with the neighborhood very well. The assisted living and memory care is very close to St. Luke's, as an example. Although the 55 plus is not restricted to 55 plus, it's actually targeted toward that age group by having landscaping that's cared for. And the price point, I think, sort of lends it to that age group. I think it would also be possible that someone with aging parents could live in the assisted living building. Someone that would like to be close to them could also buy a home just north of there to be close to them. So that would probably work out very nice also in some cases. Traffic is always an issue in this area. That area is kind of broken. And we don't have a solution for that, but I think that the use that we're proposing out of everything that could be proposed tends to contribute less traffic than a lot of other uses that could come along. And so we feel like that's a good fit also. To back up to the parking for the north residential area, we are required to have 244, and through the south revisions that Ellen spoke about there, changing the streets around, we were able to increase the bulb out areas and get 266 spaces, which is above the 244 required. And again, we've tried to pay close attention to Woodbridge's concerns and modulate the setbacks and the heights of the buildings. And again, these buildings are going to be very nice, high quality buildings. So I think that works out pretty well. We think that we've done a good job. And we've really tried to minimize that wall effect that some of the Woodbridge neighbors have expressed concern over. The previous plan that was approved, it made it all the way through City Council, was Endora, and that project was all single story, but they were townhomes. And so that was a much longer building. And so the spaces in between, again, were 3 and 3 setback side yard. And so you ended up totaling that up to maybe 30 feet of open space. And in this layout with this skinnier lots, the 40 wide lots, we actually end up with 200 feet of running distance. So we think that that's a lot better. I think the design's quite a bit better than it was last time around. The office parking, I don't know if anything was mentioned about that, but I believe Meridian requires 2 per 1,000 square feet, and we're right at 4.5, so we're overparked for that. I tend to get excited about the open space, which is a little bit strange. I obviously don't work outside, and I'm glad for that. But the 5 Mile Creek connection to the neighborhood, I think that's actually beautiful. I think with some natural grasses and the landscaping that we've shown could be a very nice evening walk for many people. And then as well as some of the connectivity that we have going north-south through the center of the space would really, provide for an interesting experience and kind of reaches out into the community with pathways. I think the ALMC is also a very nice looking building. It will have very nice views in many directions. And Alan's already mentioned all of the amenities that we're proposing in the courtyard spaces. And I think overall for the entire site, in the combined density is 9.7 units per acre, which is less than it was last time when it was approved. It was about 10. So that's really everything that I had planned on saying. So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm going to start off with one. Are you in agreement with everything then that was in the staff report? All the staff recommendations, you're in agreement with all of it? Okay.
We've been in contact. Through
Okay.
quite a
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah, just real quick. I was kind of looking for a map that was going to line up the houses on the west there with what's existing. Okay.
I have that. There it is. Can't figure out how to do full screen on this thing. Sorry. I've been trying to make the browser go away and I've not been having any luck yet.
Still not seeing.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Do you want me to leave that up, sir, or go back to the original plan?
If you could leave it up for a minute, that's all right.
Yeah.
for the commission.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioners Casanelli.
kind of to tie into that, Alan, what, the 5-foot side setbacks, is that, kind of in line with R8 or R15?
Bill says R8. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. Sorry.
And is Woodbridge R8 or R4?
There are one, they're not in the city. But if you look at the distance between the houses, when I scaled them off, it's roughly the same distance between the houses. The houses in this development are narrower. But the distance between the structures, the house is a little narrower, the lots are a little smaller, but the distance between the structures is comparable to the distance between the adjacent structures.
Any other questions? Sorry.
Do you want to show that? I think the applicant wants to see if I have.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
quick question for Jamie on those houses that are, that will back up to Woodbridge here. What are average square footages? Do you have that?
Please, yeah, you have to, say everything has to be said into that mic, sorry.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but they are listed on the exhibit that we submitted. Believe,
Are you saying the lot sizes of the development or the adjacent subdivision?
No, the in the development, the home, the average square footage of the houses there that back up to Woodbridge.
Houses.
believe, including the garages, around 1,800.
Obviously, you've got some 2-story and some 1-story in there, so it's gonna be some smaller and some larger. Okay. Madam Chair, I have another question.
Okay, good.
And then just either to Jamie, to you, or to Alan. So there is no multifamily in, is that, you went through a lot in the presentation there, and I just want, because you talked on that, but I want to make sure that that is not in this application. Is that correct?
Agreed that there was a lot. Staff does have
You
a
did a great
concern.
job.
I do agree there was a lot. My wife calls me too much information, Alan. Too much information there. To the southeast, the assisted living memory care right now is the use that's being proposed. Under TNR, the zone district that is being proposed to, multifamily would be allowed by right, meaning you would not have to come in front of the planning commission, but staff is recommending a condition on the development agreement that says that the only use that can occur there is a nursing home and assisted living. So if they wanted to do any kind of multifamily at all, they would have to amend the development agreement and it would have to come back to a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Gordon?
Madam Chair. Jamie, just a question with what Alan had mentioned with the clubhouse and the 9 additional parking spots. Is that reflected in the concept plan that we saw tonight, or is that something that still needs to be added in?
That's something that's in there tonight. It's reflected in the 266 number.
Any other questions?
Why not?
Mr. Casanelli?
Jamie, if we could put that last, the plat map up there.
The one with the lot lines,
Yeah. Well, not the
section one, or the one with the property lines?
one of the 61 homes, the home plat of the 61 homes.
Is that the proper one?
That will work.
Okay.
And The bump outs there for parking on the west side. I'm just wondering, because was going to bring this up in our comments, but since we're still in open session, I can ask Jamie here. There's really no additional park. That puts all the parking on I would assume visitor parking and whatnot on the west side. There's really nothing up in that northeast corner. Could we shift that island of homes? It's I guess it's on the south side of Gentle, what is that? Gentle something lane, to where the parking is on the east side. You see what I'm trying to envision there? Because there's no additional parking on that side. So anybody that did have to go to the other side of that, it's a random thought. I have those. It's like Alan has too much information.
We certainly could make that change.
Any other questions? Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public testimony on this application?
Madam Chair, we have several people signed in, only one indicating a wish to testify. That would be John Overton, indicating he is the representative for the Woodbridge HOA.
Thank you.
Good evening, P and Z Commission and city staff. Thank you. My name is John Overton, 1922 East Bowstring in the Woodbridge subdivision in Meridian, Idaho. We've stood before you many times, but before I start, I need to make two quick corrections. There were two little snafus that were just said, one by city staff, and I don't think he meant to. Woodbridge is very much in the city. It's not an R1 county. Woodbridge is R4. Desert Locust View Heights to the south of us is the one that's R1 in the county. I know the question was, what was Woodbridge? We are an R4 subdivision. Okay. Second thing was, city staff made a comment that said, I believe twice, that there were 244 parking spots. But when Jamie just spoke, he said 266. That needs to be clarified as well. We got multiple numbers. This is the problem we're having. This is the big problem we're having with this project is we keep hearing information and it's changing. It's been so dynamic. It's been hard for us. We didn't mark we were opposed. We didn't mark we were in favor. There's things we like about this project, but there's just been too many changes. And there's even another big change as we get through this that has not been mentioned once tonight, really. That was a major part of why we as a subdivision approved the previous project. But we need to go back. We've had 3 projects in this area east of Woodbridge. The thing to remember here is no matter what gets built there, every single vehicle has 2 options. They can go out to the east or they go to the west. There's no way they can drive south. There's no way they can drive north. When they go west, one of their 2 options is they're driving, all of those vehicles are driving through our residential subdivision on our residential streets. So we have been very involved in all of the different applications over the years on safety, traffic safety, ACHD, traffic studies, which I understand was not requested in this plan. And I'm at a loss for why this time there was no traffic study requested when in previous applications there were. So I'm a little lost on why we had no traffic study. We live in a subdivision with 269 homes and not a single crosswalk within our subdivision to get children and families across the street from the south side to the north side where our pool and park is, or from the phase 2 on the east side to our west side to get to the pool and park. We don't have a single crosswalk and we have a tremendous amount of traffic coming through Woodbridge. So I'm a little bit at a loss why ACHD isn't playing a larger role in determining what the impact's going to be on our subdivision. We have sat on committees. I sat on committees with Mayor DeVere, specifically geared toward developments that were going to affect our subdivision. For years, she said this was going to be part of the medical corridor. And we fought 2 multifamily developments successfully, all the way through city council voted down because they just didn't fit with what this area was designed for. Now, we supported strongly the last development, the first one, Andorra 1. We have not just supported this one because it's significantly different. The major effect or the major difference on this one is we got into the development agreement with the developers coming in agreement in the meeting in city council last time that the individual houses would be in the development agreement as 55 and over. We needed assurances for our residents that we're not going to have all these houses turn into young families, and maybe we're dealing with 3 or 4 cars or more per house, really negatively impacting the amount of traffic already coming through Woodbridge. We totally support the idea of assisted living, memory care, the independent living 55 and over plan. We were supporting it. We were behind it. Everything was great. We're sad that that project failed. But this is not the same project. We now sit at a position where Magic View Drive, and you don't really see it, but it's there. You come out on Magic View Drive, you turn left, boom, you're in Woodbridge. We have another development that's approved. It's on the north side of Magic View. They have a lot of parking. And yet every day, 10 to 15 cars are parked on Magic View Drive on both sides, restricting our ability to get through. And now I see a development that we still don't know what the exact number is of internal parking spaces, but you get a large event, a party, or group, we're going to have cars parked up and down that Magic View Drive. And if you get to our subdivision, we have a beautiful island and restricted area. It's going to be an absolute bottleneck. It's not going to be safe. And it's going to be a blind exit for us coming out of our subdivision. So I really would like to see the applicant and the city discuss or commit to the over 55, the 55 and older, the independent living, what really fits with the other part of their project, the same way the initial one did. I understand, and there was an initial letter we put on the file that profits were part of the issue, and we get that. But we, as residents of Woodbridge, never put profits in front of safety of the residents of our subdivision. We need this to be a well thought out and safe project for everybody. Now, with that said, the applicant's done a lot. He has. He's made a lot of changes. He's made a lot of changes to the depth and the size and the height and the fact that they're not 3-foot side setbacks, they're 5 foot. Our understanding was they were 5 foot because they couldn't put windows on the sides of those houses at a 3-foot setback. They had to go to a 5-foot setback with 10 feet between the homes before they could actually put glass on the side. I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but that information came out of planning. So the second problem we have, and it was an article online today talking about it being 55 and over, is the original plan was all 1 story. Because that's what 55 and over is. When you start building 2-story houses with some of the master bedrooms being upstairs, there's no way people in Woodbridge are going to buy for 1 minute that you intend to build it as 55 over. Not a chance. That doesn't make sense. I've never seen that anywhere. The whole reason the first project did as well as it did and had the 1-story townhouses is because that made sense. That's what other 55 and over communities did. You just don't normally ever see 2-story homes, especially not bedrooms in the 2nd story. Although I don't have to park in there, we're really concerned that those bump outs aren't ever going to hold what number crunchers tell me are going to be in there, because they're not marked parking spots. I think you're still going to be short parking we're still going to have parking out on the main roads outside of the gated community, which is going to cause issues for everybody else. The amenities. Besides hoping to see the applicant step up and say, we'll commit to 55 and over. We mean it. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to do what was done the first time, where we stood up and we said, hey, this is great. The amenities listed fit with a 55 and over. Love to see the amenities, if it's possible. I don't know. Ted can tell us whether the amenities themselves can be required and listed in a development agreement along with them agreeing to 55 and over. And they may refuse. And if the applicant refuses to 55 and over and listing out what the amenities are, at least they've told Woodbridge and all residents what their true intention is. They've kind of told us their true intention simply by the fact that they tried to change to a multifamily, because that's what we've been afraid of all along. It doesn't fit with the vision for this area. It doesn't fit with the traffic problems we've got. You can go out there to St. Luke's Lane every day and wait in those long lines. It's a nightmare. It's one of the reasons everybody uses our subdivision as a cut through. It's the reason that when a project like this comes to council, we get 150 people filling this place because they're so passionate about all these cars coming through our subdivision at all times of the day. What's that mean?
That's your 10 minutes.
Is that my 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to wrap up your thoughts.
I'll wrap. I used this term in front of the HOA board last night or Tuesday night. We are cautiously optimistic. We're not here to say deny. We're not here to definitely say approve. We're cautiously optimistic that the developer will stand up and do the right thing, which the previous developer did, to get Woodbridge's buy-in and approval. So I stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
John, over here.
Who said that? Oh, sorry, Bill. Yes,
Do
Bill.
you have any traffic counts through Woodbridge?
Working with ACHD, they have not done a traffic count since COVID started because that threw everything off. The kids weren't going to school, they weren't driving. There is a history, ACHD has them, of our traffic counts and how they were increasing for the past almost 10 years. We continued to request them and had John Wasson from ACHD come in and run those counts. There was a request to have another traffic count done. I think it was this spring, and I never saw it happen. And I don't know whether they're just busy or backlogged, but we need another one because now we're seeing the world kind of come back to life and the traffic's really picking up. And that's before this has been built. I hope that answered your question.
I was hoping you had one, maybe even from 19 or, but you don't know of a recent.
No, they're obtainable. I actually, we've made requests before from ACHD for all of them so we can show the historical pattern of what we've seen. Because we've actually looked at those in the meetings with ACHD and Meridian City staff.
Okay,
So it can absolutely be obtained.
thank you.
Thank you. And I understand Mr. Overton spoke for the subdivision, so if there's anybody else that has anything additional to add, or I'm assuming you were all in agreement of his presentation. Okay, so that being said, is there anybody else that wanted to testify?
Madam Chair, we have no one else signed up.
Okay, anybody else in the room have something urgent? Okay, Alan.
I just would like to add a couple of staff's comments on some of the things that Mr. Ovington discussed. if
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Yeah.
First of all, my apologies. That was a snafu about about your subdivision, you're not being in the city. My bad. About the 55 plus, the one thing I want to comment about that is that's certainly something that the applicant can do. But it's important to mention, because we've talked about these before, these sort of things have come in front of you, and I've said the same thing from bad experiences in other municipalities, not this one. It's very difficult for staff to enforce 55 plus. The only way that staff, if I'm reviewing a project, the only way that you'll convince me to review the project under the assumption that it will be 55 plus is a deed restriction. That's really the only way that it can be enforced. Otherwise, it could be something that the applicant could offer, whether it's the covenants or something like that. Unless there's a deed restriction, and I believe it's illegal, there's really not much we can enforce with it being 50. It could be targeted towards 55 plus. In regard to the amenities, that's something very easily. Generally, our development agreements say that the concept plan would generally conform with that what's being approved should generally conform with what's being presented. You could certainly add the amenities as they're being required into the development agreement. So if Mr. Ovington thought that that would help calm the concerns of the adjacent neighbors, certainly you can say that the amenities as listed in the planning commission hearing would be part of the development agreement. The last thing in regard to the parking, he's absolutely right. It's been a very dynamic thing. At the time that the staff report went out, the concept plan that we had 244 parking spaces. There were missing parking spaces for the clubhouse. There is a recent version of the concept plan, which you are now seeing here. I have not counted those parking spaces because I got this today. I would leave that to the applicant to mention whether that new number of 266, I think he said, is correct. You could certainly add that to the development agreement. And last, just as a FYI, this is actually slightly less number of units than the one with the multifamily. When ACHD commented, what they said is that because we reviewed it with the previous one and we did not require a traffic study, the way they put this is, as a courtesy to the neighborhood, you may consider doing a traffic study, but a traffic study is not required.
Would the applicant like to come back?
Just to clarify, the 266 number is correct for the north residential portion. The offices have 45 stalls and the assisted living to the south has 110 stalls. And ACHD took a look at the layout of this scheme, and the average daily trips did not rise to the level to warrant a study. So we didn't have one done.
Okay.
And then I believe Brent may want to say a few words too.
My name's, I don't really have to bend over, sorry. This is Brent Thompson, was my name. I live 2476 East Lacrosse Circle in St. George, Utah, but former resident of Meridian City. Used to live in the Saguaro Canyon neighborhood when it was first developed years ago. So I am have some roots here, and my in-laws live here as well. But we're really excited about this project. I've got a couple of comments just to, I hate the word rebuttal. That always sounds a little aggressive, but I do have a couple comments based on some of the previous commentary. But we're super excited about this project. Many of you probably don't know that we actually were under contract for this project right before it was approved at City Council. So we've been involved in the original project. Due to COVID and so forth and circumstances, previous developer chose to sell. That's when we got involved, and they did not own any of the parcels at that time. Since then, we closed on all of these parcels. We own them. We've invested a great deal of money in trying to get the design, in our opinion, to a better design. Some of the challenges that we had, and I just wanted to kind of, it was thrown out there that we're making decisions for profits. We're making decisions based on marketability and the livability of the community. Agreed that the 55 and older was great concept. The challenge is that they had for sale fee simple product. So when we had the original design, only had 1-car garages and really small units, about 1,000 square feet. For us, we felt that just wasn't sufficient for most people that are looking to live in the area. I consider myself one of the prospects to live in this community. I'm 51 years old almost, and I have parents that are aging that I'd love to have in this building, and I view people such as myself to live in that area. I recall the city council in approving the project last year, one of the council members commented about, similar to Alan had commented about the challenges of restricting 55 and older. We're targeting 55 and older, so to speak, or my generation and older, simply so that we can be able to take care of our parents and people that may be housed in a building such as this. The building's a phenomenal building designed by Babcock Design. Jamie's done a phenomenal job with it and his team. We also have a great team with Van Elg and Keith back here with JUB Engineering. We've integrated both the engineering firm and the architectural firm at the very start of this project, simply so that we can have the project well designed and be able to maximize its potential. Excuse me. Sorry, I always get a little nervous when I have to do this, and we have so many commissioners. But I just wanted to just make a couple of comments. I value very much the process that we have here in this great country of ours, and for the opportunity to speak up and for citizens to be able to share their thoughts and so forth. The Woodbridge community is a very beautiful community. I respect that very much. And they're very interested in what's happening here, obviously. And it sounds like it's been going on for years. We've really put forth the effort and the expense to make this the best project that we possibly can, and to make it economically pencil, and to be able to provide a building such as this. You can imagine this 3-story assisted living memory care building. It's significant in cost, close to around $20 million or more. When we first got some of our bids back, because we've already gone down the road of designing this architecturally, some of the bids, just because of the costs and everything else, and the changes, we had a little bit of sticker shock. So we did go back to Alan and said, hey, what are our potential? I just want to make sure that it's known that when it said multifamily, we are simply going back to the old apartment design, which is really a 55 and older apartment complex. We weren't coming in with a traditional apartment building. We feel that we can make this building work and make this project work and be a great success, although it is more expensive than it was. We're building it with steel and putting a significant amount of investment in it. Many of you may or may not know much about opportunity zones, but this is actually an opportunity zone area. And this is an exciting, I don't know how many projects have been done in opportunity zones for that purpose. But there's no intent to flip or sell this project. It's simply going to be an asset that's going to be held for at least 10 years or beyond. And we're super excited about it. We think the architecture is exciting. The product that we have here is really modeled similar to other projects here in Meridian City already, which are similar to Brighton's Cadence product. They have 2-story product there as well as single family. The other product they have is Pine 43, also similar product. I get a little uncomfortable when there's any kind of somewhat discrimination against young families that may move in. That's not our target, but at the same time, we can't prohibit if somebody does have children that wants to move there, or if somebody that's been divorced and has a young family. And I don't think we can do that in any community, whether it be Meridian City, St. George, or anywhere we may live. We are targeting 55 and older, but at the same time, we're definitely going to have people that are maybe 51 like myself that would like to live here as well. It's a gated community. I have a very similar community in St. George, Utah called Bella Vista. It's also a gated community. We have 101 homes approved there. We've got right now 76 residents, most of which are from 50 to 75 years old. It's not age restricted, but just by nature, it draws that client. And so I think it's a lot cleaner, and that's really our intent. We're not going to try to do every home a 2-story home. People may want to have the single level, but we want to have the flexibility to do so. My last example, my mother-in-law just moved from Eagle last year and moved into a Cadence, Brighton home by Cadence. They're off of Chinden. She has a 2-story product. We just stayed there 3 weeks ago as a family in the upper floor. They have a main floor master, and it's a beautiful product and very much in demand. And I believe those setbacks are even smaller than what what are proposed here is a 5-foot setback, which I think is most of the Meridian City is 5-foot setback, I believe. So we think it's a very exciting product. We're putting in the money and the investment to make it right. We don't have any bank financing or anything on the project. We've come in and put forth our very best efforts on this project, and we have a lot to gain to be able to make it best for the community. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any if we had any.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Yearsley.
so just so I can clarify for the record that you're not planning to do any deed restrictions on these homes. Just
No, just simply because, again, we believe there's market individuals like myself that. And the other thing, just let me clarify that, especially with so many people that have moved from out of state, we see this as an opportunity for people to, they have a loved one that needs to be in the memory care or the assisted living building. Somebody may want to have a second home within this community where, the yards are maintained and have great amenities when they come and visit. We just don't know exactly who that buyer is. And by limiting it 55 and older, it just creates challenges and title challenges.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
Just a quick question on the memory care unit and everything. That's, is that going to go in? At what stage is that going to go in compared to the single family?
We're actually going to go immediately, assuming if we can get through Planning and Zoning Commission as well as City Council. We've actually gone through the expense, and it's our risk. And we do this on most of our projects, certainly up here in Treasure Valley. Developed 3 successful projects already. We've got 7 that we're developing right now. This is being one of them. We already have the civil engineering drawings almost done for the entire site, knowing that there may be a few changes here and there upon approval. We also have the 3-story building is, Jamie, could you just give me a number, how much percentage done? Okay. So we hope
Repeat
to have
that number
that.
in the microphone for the,
He said about 25% done as far as and that's construction drawings. So when I say a great expense, these aren't just conceptuals that Jamie did in his office. The little office building is down below, but that's kind of a simple 9,000 square foot building. The 3-story building is already in process in design. So we hope to start immediately after approval, if we're so lucky to have do so. We'll actually be submitting construction drawings soon after.
thank you. If there's no more questions, could I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0024?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That, I think, we clarified in earlier discussions that I think everything that Alan went through is in the staff report as ready, all the considerations, all the additional things that you wanted added, including the restriction of this being a memory care unit, not a multifamily, unless they come back with a different application.
Yes, except there would be an additional restriction regarding the 5-foot setbacks that just
Okay.
happened. And the concept plan that you saw tonight is about 1 day old. So you would be also approving the concept plan dated July 13th. Additional parking and the trail connection put into the east, the southernmost alley turning into a road, and then what was a road south of the pool disappearing and becoming green space.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I could inquire.
Oh.
Okay, if I could inquire of Alan, there was an expressed desire to perhaps link the specifically listed amenities as part of the DA. Would that require an additional part of the motion to do that? I'm getting.
Bill's nodding his head. So if you wanted to reference the amenities as listed in the staff report, you certainly could do that.
We'll open for discussion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
All in all, I think it's a really nice product. A lot of it fits in there. Having sat through several projects that have affected Woodbridge directly, I do have concerns, and I don't know if it would be in our purview to condition for maybe some traffic calming measures if they have absolutely no, not even a crosswalk in there. And I think that the pool is really right there on on what is the collector on Woodbridge Avenue. I'm looking at, and quite frankly, and I've expressed disappointment in ACHD more than one time up here. I pulled up a traffic study on Woodbridge, and it was from 2017. And there was a 24-hour count of over 2,000 vehicles, and that's acceptable on a collector, but not on local streets. And everything winds up feeding those local streets to the backside of Woodbridge. I don't live in Woodbridge, but I've used it as a cut through more than once in the past. When you look at traffic eastbound, westbound, the AM peak, the numbers look like, just from what I'm seeing here, is actually people going in and out of Woodbridge or going through Woodbridge into that area. So this is going to increase the traffic, and unfortunately, there's no other way out other than whatever up at the light there across from St. Luke's. So people are going to naturally go through Woodbridge. And again, so I come back to that. I don't know if there's any way that we can condition for, again, if it's in our purview or not, or just recommend maybe city council condition for some traffic calming measures if we can through Woodbridge to help that. But other than that, I think it's gonna, I tend to agree with the applicant. I think it's gonna attract more of an older empty nest type of situation. But I think it's, all in all, I think it's a neat project for the area. Those are my thoughts.
I guess I would comment on that. I'm certainly not in the planning profession or legal, but I would imagine that it is not in our purview to condition this applicant to do something in another subdivision. I would encourage the people of Woodbridge to keep working with ACHD because that is the controlling entity of that. And I'll stand from correction by legal or staff if that was.
That was exactly what I was going to tell you. Unless they offered and ACHD was amenable, we can't make them do offsite improvements. We can only make them do, ACHD can make you pay into a pot of money for road improvements to widen a road or something like that, but we can't make them do traffic calming for Woodbridge. But they could offer and work with the ACHD, but we can't require it.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Yearsley.
I have to admit, I'm a little torn. I did listen to the residents or the HOA of Woodbridge, and they're really close, I think. I understand the desire not to make this deed restricted. My biggest concern ultimately is we're seeing a new trend of huge huge companies coming in and just buying the entire and then renting everything. And at that point, you don't know what you'll ever get with rentals. So, and I don't know how to fix that either. So, I mean, it's not something that I expect to be fixed. I would like to see, this site plan has changed significantly since the initial submittal. I wouldn't mind seeing the applicant reaching out to Woodbridge one more time and at least presenting what they have, showing the parking so they can be more comfortable with that. And at least try to reach out to them and help to try to figure out a solution before city council. Overall, I think it's a fairly good layout. Still think it's a little dense, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Grove.
I don't have an issue with the density. The layout is sufficient for me. I guess I have a couple of questions for staff, just in regards to the roads, Magic View and Wells. Are those streets, are you allowed to park on those streets? And is that something that we can have any say over, or is that out of our purview?
Alan Tiefenbach, yes, I believe you can park on those. We could suggest ACHD work with the applicant, but they are right of ways, not private roads. So we can't tell ACHD what to do with their roads. We could say, pretty please. The applicant is required to do some road improvements, sidewalks and some widening, but comes back down to the ACHD is in charge of the roads.
And then second question, and I think this was one of the first projects that I heard when I came onto the commission a year ago. Same question, I guess, is what is the possibility of having another connection east-west with future development? I know it had come up quite a bit during the comprehensive plan review a few years ago, but just knowing if there was any movement on that front.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think that's what Alan alluded to in his presentation to you this evening. You know, that was, from my perspective, when this project was back in front of you a year ago, we were getting that street stub to that county subdivision with the R1 lots, and the vision, the plan does contemplate a connection out to Locust Grove to provide relief to Woodbridge. But again, as this body realizes, that comes with development and redevelopment of other properties. And so, you know, when we analyzed this project before we even brought it to you, that's something that we discussed as staff, is we were concerned that now that we're taking out this 5-acre piece that was originally part of it, and now it isn't, we've created another roadblock for having that road get extended like we want and provide some of that relief to Woodbridge. So certainly that's something within your purview tonight. Obviously, you can't make them extend the road, but that's certainly something you should take into consideration as you deliberate on the application tonight.
Thank you. All said, I like the changes that we've seen tonight, and I'm on board with moving this project forward.
I'll jump in. It is different than what we saw originally, and I think what we saw a year ago, we were all clapping for, but I think this is somewhat the same impact and does fit in the opportunity zone with the nursing care, but I would be in strong support that this is tied to the DA, that it'd be a nursing care, that they would have to come back to do anything else with it. Any other high density option.
So, Madam Chair,
Commissioner Easley?
is it already in the staff report that they have to, that in the DA that is to be a assisted living unit? Okay.
I believe it is stated correctly there.
Yeah, there's a direct reference that says that's the only thing that can happen there.
I guess I'm just making an over point of it because it normally is allowed in the TN, with the zone we're bringing in here. So.
Which is why there's a direct note in the
Yes.
DA for that reason.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Seal.
Yeah, just looking at it, I mean, at first when I was reading through this and just some of the public comment and the history of it and things like that, I was especially some of the wording with the memory care unit in there, it was kind of lining up in my mind like a little bit of a bait and switch, where we'll put the community in there and then we'll kind of change that out later if it doesn't work out, but where I think we're writing it in, or staff has had the forethought to write in the fact that that has to be a medical facility. And then the feedback from the applicant on the fact that they want to start this right away. The planning is already there. The architecting is already coming into place. I feel less like that at this point in time. So I feel that the applicants, although not communicating it very well, it seems like this kind of came in at the last minute. They've done everything that they've really been asked by the neighbors as far as improving the setbacks, bearing the housescape, I guess you would call it, going through there just to provide a little bit better breakup of the lots. Fairly good alignment of the lots. I think that could be a little better. If they dropped a unit or two in there and really worked on lining those things up, I think that transition would be a little bit better for the neighbors, a little bit easier to swallow. So, I mean, I kind of go back to one of our former commissioners, Ryan, where I also looked at this and where it's at. This thing's right off of Eagle Road. If this were in 10 Mile and somebody came in with single family over multifamily, we'd probably be saying, no way. This is where multifamily needs to go. So the fact that it is single family and the density isn't that high and everybody can swallow that, then I'm okay with it too. So I'm definitely not somebody that likes to push multifamily and large developments. That said, land is disappearing fast in Meridian. So there's only so many places you can put that, especially with this kind of access to the freeway. So I think all of this is going to line up. There are other options that will become viable in the future for cut through or not cut through to avoid the cut through coming through Woodbridge. So I think that in all, I think I'm on board with pushing it forward.
Any other comments or motions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
after considering all staff, applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-0024 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 15, 2021, with the following modifications. To add the amenities stated in the meeting today into the design or development agreement. To add the 5-foot setbacks on the homes on the west side of the property. And I would like to see the applicant at least reach out to the Woodbridge Homeowners Association to discuss further actions before City Council.
And also the concept as shown tonight.
Yeah, that's what the 5-foot setback.
No, add the concept plan dated July 13th.
Yes, and to add the concept plan dated today.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, one other item that was discussed, the additional parking that Commissioner Casanelli wanted added in the northeast corner to kind of disperse some parking. The applicant agreed to adding some more into the development. I wasn't sure if any of the other commissioners wanted that as well.
If I could jump in, just clarify that it was more just shifting it to the east. It wasn't what I had mentioned, but if the motion wants to add more parking, but my thought on that was just to shift some of that from the west to the east.
I think for my motion, my thought was they could try to adjust that as best as they see fit and not require.
Second.
Okay. Are we clear on the motion, staff? Okay. It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval of H-2021-0024 Wells Street Assisted Living and Andorra subdivision with modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is H-2021-0040 Bright Star Residential Care Facility, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Sorry, I'm getting caught up with myself. Okay, this is a conditional use permit to allow a 5,800 square foot nursing and residential care facility in the LO zoning district. This includes a request for a DA modification to reduce a 20-foot wide required landscape buffer, and I'll go through that shortly. Site consists of 2 lots totaling just a little less than half an acre, zoned LO, located at 333, well, basically on Meridian Road across the street from Settlers Park, northeast corner of North Meridian and East Ustick. Adjacent properties, R8 is to the north, single family residential. East and south is LO.
Before you go, can you put that up on the screen?
Oh, I'm
your
sorry. My apologies. I thought we were there. Did it not come up? I thought I had shared it. My bad.
Thank you.
Thank you for telling me. Okay, adjacent land use to the north, R8, single family residential. East and south is LO, office and commercial. To the west is Settlers Park. This property is part of the Settlers Business Park. About half of this development has built out. There's these 2 lots and I believe 3 more commercial lots left. The future land use map recommends this property for office uses. However, this proposal includes a nursing and residential care facility. It's important to note, though, that is this zoned LO, and this nursing and residential care facility is a use allowed in that zone district by conditional use, which is why we're in front of you this evening. Here's a picture of the site plan. What's being proposed is at the top quadrant, I guess, at the left. That's what you see in gray. This is a zoom in, so this is part of what's built there now, not all of it. But again, this is for a 5,800 square foot nursing and residential care facility. It's for 12 residents, 12 bedrooms, 12 residents, up to 2 staff. It's surrounded by existing commercial. Most of it's built out. Again, 3 more lots left. All of the parking and the driveways are already there. Under our code, you have to provide a 0.5 space for every bed. Now, this would be required to provide 6 parking spaces, not including the office for staff, which again would be a few extra parking for 2. The parking regulation, like I said, the parking regulation doesn't mention the parking requirements for the 2 staff. However, at the time of the CZC, the applicant will need to give us how big that office is. However, to mention this, the 6 existing buildings, so there's 6 buildings there now, and I added up the square footages of all those buildings just to guesstimate. All the parking is shared amongst the whole business center. So we wanted to make sure there was adequate parking there. I calculated guesstimate of about 2,300 square foot total gross area. That's based on the assessor's website. They give you what the square footages are. Based on that, there would be 46 parking spaces required. Within this center, I counted at least 160. And 14 of these parking spaces are on the subject's property. We were talking about the parking spaces down here. 3 of the lots are still vacant. And as I mentioned in the staff report, although it's unknown what is going to develop on those last 3 lots, if and when those lots develop, they'll have to go through a certificate of zoning compliance. But given the amount of developable land there and the 160 parking spaces, staff is reasonably confident that the additional 108 parking spaces that are there would accommodate the other 3 commercial buildings. This is a landscape plan, and to the north, we're going to talk about this. To the north is a landscape buffer that you see here. The landscape buffer shown here is 10 feet. The development agreement for this, when this was annexed, requires a 20-foot wide buffer to the north. Usually a reduction in landscape buffer can be done through alternative compliance administratively. However, in this case, it's required by the development agreement. So it's actually something that the city council would have to approve. The applicant has noted that the Settlers Business Park has responded, so the owner of this whole business park, they responded that the original intent of that requirement was to mitigate impacts of commercial type uses to the adjacent residences to the north. The applicant and the business park's position is that this is kind of a residential use because it's a assisted living memory care. In addition to that, there's a fence that's along the northern boundary. And even though they're not providing the 20-foot buffer, they are providing almost 3 times as many trees. And again, a fence. So they believe that the buffer as shown is sufficient. Staff does not have concerns with the reduction in the buffer. I haven't received any other concerns from the neighbors. So if the planning commission were okay with this, it could just literally be something where the planning commission would tell the council they support the council making a DA amendment just for this particular site to reduce that buffer. Here is a picture of the elevations. Very similar looking residential structures. So the issues here are 3 things: a landscape buffer, easement, east-west pedestrian accent, and a lot merger. So I already talked about the landscape buffer going from 20 feet to 10 feet. The easement, you couldn't see it here, but I can show you. This is a water easement 10 foot by the city, and it just clips this building just a teeny tiny little bit. We've already talked to Public Works. There's no water line there now. Public Works is okay with them vacating and rededicating this easement. It would have to go through city council. So that's one of the conditions of approval. Another issue is about east-west pedestrian access, and maybe the applicant can describe this a little better, but we're concerned about in order to do this memory care, one of the requirements if they have memory care is they have to have fencing. It's not super clear to staff, and it wasn't super clear to staff in the development review meeting whether there is sufficient unimpeded access from the west lot to the east. We wanted to make sure. So we're just having a condition of approval that at the time of the CCC, the applicant will demonstrate that there's sufficient unimpeded access along sidewalks or walkways from the northwest to the southeast. Last issue is a lot merger, which is not much of an issue, but there's 2 lots. This building straddles those lots. This is something that could be done administratively, so the applicant would have to merge lots as a condition of approval. With that, we recommend approval of this conditional use to allow the nursing and residential care. We recommend that you discuss whether you support the DA mod to allow a reduction to the landscape buffer. And if it goes to the council and the council does not approve this DA mod, then the applicant would have to revise the drawings, obviously, to meet that 20-foot buffer. With that, that completes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Jeff Hatch with Hatch Design Architecture. Address is 200 West 36th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83714. Good evening, Chair McCarvin and Commissioners. Thank you for your consideration of our conditional use permit application this evening. I do have a presentation.
I'm working and I'm trying.
While Alan's getting that up, I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit. Bright Star Care is a residential business that's here in their corporate office for the people operating this and the other agencies. We have several different locations around the Treasure Valley. They're all operated out of Boise locally. So these are local business owners operating a local residential care business here in the valley. So as Alan had mentioned, this location is in a business park that's adjacent to a neighborhood. And we typically like to either place these in kind of infill lots in neighborhood communities or in a transition area between a commercial business park and a neighborhood. We found that this strategy of having neighbors on one side that are residential and commercial on the southern side creates a transition between those and a nice buffer between the more commercial use, more residential use, and that transitional use of the residential care that we're really wanting to achieve. A couple things that make it a little unique is we really try to design these homes to be just that, dwellings. They have a residential feel, they have a residential look, and the people that live there enjoy that, it's like living in a house, because that's the intent. And it's a very different model that you see elsewhere and that was presented previously. This is about being able to live and feel comfortable in a space that feels like a home. That's kind of the key to Bright Star. So as mentioned by staff, to the east and the south and the west, we have part of that business park. The interesting thing is, as Alan said, there's a fair amount of parking. From our neighborhood meeting, there's not enough parking. In many cases, in business parks, that is a concern we found. The good news is, and especially in this case, our proposed use is very complementary to that concern, mainly because none of the 12 people that live there drive. So the only people that are going to be occupying parking spaces on a consistent basis are the two staff members that are there at all times. You will, on occasion, have an additional couple nurses and people that come to help on occasion, which really comes to maybe a maximum of 4. And on occasion, on weekends, you will have visitation. That visitation has to be staggered due to the age and nature of the occupants. We can't have a half dozen people running around these dwellings. One, it doesn't maintain that residential feel and kind of community that Bright Star wants, but also they can't manage that. So they have to regulate the amount of vegetation that they have. So in talking with the neighbors, there was some concerns because directly east of us is a daycare. Daycare has an influx of a fairly extensive amount of parking needs, especially early in the morning and in the afternoon. After hearing our parking dialogue, they seemed very excited that that wasn't going to be an issue. The other consideration is this particular proposed project takes up 2 lots of this business park. So not only are we only taking up 2 parking spaces consistently, it could be 2 totally different businesses taking up way more parking. So we feel that the nature of this being kind of nestled up to the neighborhood, but also meeting the needs of the commercial business park is important. So looking at the concept site plan, we have a range of porches and decks space. Many of these individuals are in walkers or wheelchairs and are mobilely impaired. And so having that ability to be able to go out onto a porch, go out onto a deck and experience being outside. We also have interior spaces. We have what's called the rocker alley, where you can rock and look outside as well, are important. And so part of the joy and excitement we have about this particular location is being next to a daycare, because especially, a lot of these elderly individuals don't necessarily see their family every day, but being able to hear little kids having a good time and laughing and playing helps them have a more positive experience and more positive outlook on life and on a day-to-day basis. And so we feel that being nestled to that daycare facility, one, will help the individuals living at this community, but also lends itself nicely as a complementary business to that daycare facility. As staff had mentioned, a couple conditions of approval. We're in agreement with everything staff had mentioned. As far as the access path, that is not currently shown, but can be easily proposed and adjusted. And that's something that we can do through our CZC. We feel very confident in design review. Again, you can see here in the site plan. You can see this is where that designated properly line is between the two. It's okay. Kind of a blending of the residential style to the north and the commercial business park we're keeping with the same language that we have in most of the branding of this community. It's one story, low profile, very residential in nature with the porches. We did go to a stucco because the business park is predominantly stucco, and part of the, the architectural language of that business park is to do something that ties in. And so we did want to make sure that we were complementary to that. As far as an example of what these residents look like, this is one that was recently finished. So we wanted to show you that as kind of a comparison. It is very residential in nature. And in some cases, such as this location, we actually use the word resi-mercial because it really is that transition between the two. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant or staff?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Yearsley?
so you show a garage door. Can you show me on your plan where that's supposed to be located and how we're going to access that?
Yeah, so good question. The garage door is not a garage. The garage door is for servicing and delivery. So it's predominantly used for storage. It's not even deep enough to store a car. So again, the intent with that is to make it feel like a residential dwelling and look like a residential dwelling and function as a residential care facility.
Would you show me on your plan where that's?
It would be on the far western side.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Casanelli?
I have two questions. Number one, without the reduction in that 20-foot landscape buffer down to 10-foot, will this not work?
Commissioner Casanelli, the state has certain requirements on square footages that we have to have for bedroom spaces and also commercial space, dining room areas. And so for the proposed 12 beds, this functions very well. It is a fairly compact site, and land is limited in the city of Meridian. And so we talked with, the commercial association, and they said, well, it's not really intended for residential uses. It's intended for commercial uses because we don't want to have, commercial businesses within that buffer for the residents. What we found in the past is we typically infill these in residential neighborhoods. So not only are we actively having projects that are in residential neighborhoods, in many cases, we do this same thing where they're nestled up next to residences. And we feel that working with staff and requesting that to city council, that it would be appropriate to reduce this because we're not intending to have any kind of commercial operation. We have people using this as a residential dwelling, just as the houses to the north.
But I guess the square footage that's required, if you don't have that, if you don't reduce that down to 10 feet, this building won't accommodate 12 beds. Is that?
Yeah, I would reduce it by approximately 6 or 7 beds.
Okay. And then if I may, another question, Madam Chair. All the buildings in there, live fairly close, so I'm familiar with this park here. They're all kind of a tan or brown color in there. You're showing blue, and I mean, the design is a staff issue, but is your intent, and is there an agreement through with the other businesses there to kind of go in with the color schemes, or are you looking to be blue and stand out in there?
The current proposed color is blue. I think we're open to suggestions. We wanted to make sure that we had complementary materials, and there are other commercial businesses in that business park that they all kind of tend to be brown, but there are other pad sites in there that may change colors. There's no real color restrictions on that, but if the commission would like us to go into the browns, I think the owners would be fine making that more complementary to the area.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher.
out of all of the half-acre places that you could put your facility, why did you choose this one when it's clearly all commercial? I realize there's an adjacent subdivision, but what drew you to this particular space?
Yeah, I think when they were looking at it, they got excited about the daycare. They got excited that it was right up to the residence. So we're kind of tucked in next to them. And it has fairly easy access onto Meridian, just for ease of use of the employee staff. So I think, looking at, the ability to have an adjacent complementary neighbor that's going to complement not only the people that live here, but also help assist in the parking needs or the parking demand on that business was beneficial. And then being able to be that transition between the commercial to the south and the residential to the north, that resi-mercial concept was the other thing that we were looking for. We have another conditional use that goes in about 3 weeks. That is almost a verbatim in Boise. North is the residence, south is the commercial. We're kind of tucked up right next to it in a nice little landscape buffered area. This is where we find kind of a nice blending and a very complementary transition. So yeah, this would be kind of an ideal location in our mind.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Thank
Thank you. Oh,
Sorry to interject, and this is something I probably should have caught before the meeting and talked to Alan, but I do have a question for Alan, if I can ask him about the easement. Your specific condition number 5 about vacating and rededicating the easement that's shown here on the site plan. Is the intent just to get rid of the offending portion that invades the building footprint?
Yes, I mean, it's encroaching onto the easement, so he just have to work with Public Works to erase and rededicate.
Okay, just a suggestion, you don't need to change the condition, but routinely we'll see that the engineer will just do a legal description of the part that needs to come out. And we have a form for a partial vacation of an easement. That'll satisfy the condition. I just wanted to.
Would that need to go to council?
No, it's submitted through the Acela portal.
As much as it pains me to not have to take this to council and write a staff report, somehow I think I'll manage.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, we do not.
That being said, is there anybody in the room or on Zoom who wishes to testify on this application? Sir, come forward.
Good evening. I'm Chris Sullivan. My address is 3429 South Osterley Place in Eagle, but I am the owner of the daycare right next door. First of all, I was very much opposed to a big facility. I feel that that's a big facility for that spot. But the proposal came through and they had a meeting of all of the people in there. And I was pleasantly surprised once I got to talk to them about how willing they were to work with us. Right now, currently, we have about 200 kids in and out of our building during a week. So I am concerned about the parking. We have a lot of people in and out. We do preschool classes, so they're not all there at the same time. So once I spoke to them about that, the fact that that could be 2 different businesses generating a lot more traffic than what they're going to generate made it a little bit easier for me to swallow and to go, gosh, this might be a really good relationship. we walk our kids quite often. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that area, but kitty corner from us is another nursing home on the other side of Ustick and Meridian. And we walk our kids over there to visit and to sing Christmas songs and take Valentines. And so the idea of having a care facility right there really does appeal to us as much as it appeals to them. It always makes me laugh when they say, oh, it'll be great to hear the kids laughing and talking. And I said, so what about when they're not laughing and talking? How's that going to work? Because there's a lot of that in a childcare. And I was reassured that that is exactly what their staff is there for. You know, when things are, if they're out on the patio and they start hearing a child crying or throwing a fit outside, then they know to intervene and direct them back into the building and kind of, you know, figure that one out. So I'm encouraged with this. I just wanted to speak up because I kept hearing the preschool and the daycare. And the only reason I came is I wanted to make sure that what we had been told a month or so ago is really what was being proposed, because I do think it would be a fairly good relationship. And the parking in that facility is crazy. It just is. Since I think the original plan there, Dave Evans has already started. There's a lot directly across from the preschool. And I went out there being the nosy neighbor that I am and said, so what's planned for here? And they're like, oh, it's going to be another office building. Do you know who that's going to be? No, we're just going to build it and hopefully they'll come. The other one is that there's physical therapists that built down by the dentist. So we are all kind of, you know, low office buildings, but I think that their proposal would go well in there. So that's just what I wanted to add to the. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Do you care about the color?
I wanted blue when I started and I was told I couldn't, but no, I don't think it really matters.
Does the applicant have any other comments?
Yeah, I would just add, and Chris, thanks for coming. In the neighborhood meeting, the owner and operator actually got on to answer those questions about the operation. They wanted to personally be able to say, you know, this is how we would handle those situations, and this is why we're excited about being at this location. And so, you know, you can build residential in a lot of different ways, but the intent of Bright Star is to make sure that this is part of the community and that every one of these has a residential feel. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Castanelli?
I know there was no, there weren't any comments or anything from the neighbors directly to the north. Did you have a neighborhood meeting with them at all? And did you get any comments from, how many homes? It looks like, are there 2 lots or 3 lots or on the north side?
There's approximately 3 lots, which you can see on the site plan, that would have dwellings adjacent to us. They were noticed for our neighborhood meeting. We had a gentleman directly south to us come on, and we did have a couple neighbors just kind of hop on briefly, but no real comments.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, could I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0040?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0040. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I'll start.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Lorcher.
When I first was looking at the map, I was very confused of why someone would want to build a residential area among the asphalt of an office building. And, you know, I looked at the proposal before we came tonight, but I went on the internet a little bit as presentations were being made and see how the facility looks and works. And considering there is a assisted living facility literally less than a half a mile away across the street, it seems that these types of facilities are kind of popping up where you can fit them. And this community type of living seems to be in favor, especially with older adults. My own mother is in a community, but it's a high-rise type community. And I think if you can sell it and they will come, then more power to you. The daycare, the adjacency of the other businesses don't really concern me. I would, maybe your residents, they wouldn't come there if they didn't like it. So, and with only 12, it's a pretty limited space to offer residency. But if you're backdecking in your community and is something that would be a benefit to these seniors and it could work, I'm in favor for it. Thank you.
Mr. Grove.
Madam Chair. I'd just like to say, having the two facilities close to each other is something that I really like. I have young children in daycare, and having them be able to go to one of these facilities that's close to their care facility is a big benefit to the children being able to go, do the Christmas carols and things like that. But having watching the faces of the people living in one of those places just light up when those kids are around is something that, I'm happy to go with the kids and see every year. So I think this fits and I don't see any issues with the application.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
I like the blue.
I'm not
I
saying
think
I
it's a
don't
good
like the blue. It's just
I have to admit, I'm grateful that you came out to show your support for this project because, one of the things that for me that I look at is, for projects like this, is there, what effect is it to the surrounding community, and to have you come up and say that, I really appreciate you stopping by for that. And I think it's a good project. I think it's a good fit. I think it will help with the usage, especially with the parking. I have to admit, I'm not too concerned about losing the 10 feet on the buffer. So I would be in support of this project.
Any other comments or motions? I guess I'm in agreement with what's recently been said here by Commissioner Grove and Commissioner Yearsley and Schwartz. I think it's a good fit for all the above reasons.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
First, I'd like to thank the applicant for covering parking enough that Commissioner Casanelli just didn't have an in on it.
I got nothing on that.
After that, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-040040 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 15th, 2021, with no modifications.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve file H 2021-0040. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thanks. Next, we have H 2021-0041, the WRRF map amendment. And boy, do we have staff here tonight, boy. We'll start with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. It has been a while, so it's my pleasure to be back before you presenting on WRRF, our wastewater resource recovery facility out near 10 Mile and Ustick, as you can see on the first slide. Before I get into the presentation too much, I do want to thank Bill Parsons, Sonia Allen, who's out right now, but they helped draft the staff report and work with us. But I've been working with Public Works over the past couple of months on this application, but they've done a lot of the heavy lifting to get the items you see in your packet. So thank you to staff for that help. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is near our wastewater treatment plant is another way. It has several names that we refer to it as, but it's where our wastewater is treated out near, again, the northwest corner of 10 Mile and Ustick. Earlier this year, the city did purchase an additional 40 acres
just north, and I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, just north of the existing facility. And that prompted Public Works to, again, start talking with planning staff about a change to our future land use map. What you see on the top of this exhibit is the current designation on our comprehensive plan, future land use map. The designation of that 40 acres and several of the properties actually around the wastewater treatment plant is designated mixed use non-residential. So as you would anticipate in the name, doesn't allow anyone to live in those areas. And I'll let Lorelei McVeigh, who's in Public Works, speak to you a little bit about this more. She has a couple slide presentation, but they recently completed an odor study. And based on that study, planning staff is recommending some changes to our future land use map that would allow some of that area to be opened up to residential uses in the future. Again, because the odor, the nuisance essentially isn't there, or it's there very, very minimally throughout the year. And again, I'll let her get into some of those statistics. In the application, what Public Works applied for, and it's partially my fault, I feel, I think eventually a lot of what the city owns will be zoned industrial. Their application was actually to change it from mixed use non-residential to industrial. After we talked about it a little bit more internally, what staff recommends you approve this evening, or recommend to council approval, is actually a civic designation. That matches, and it is truly the intent of our Public Works Department is to keep this civic in city hands for what is green, at least the lower 2/3 of the 40 acres that Public Works owns. We have collaborated with Brighton, who is working on a project called Quartet just to the west, and they wanted to come alongside, or we asked them if they're interested in coming alongside this application to also help us protect some of that area that they currently own, and then open up some of what they could develop further with residential, kind of shown in the yellow. So medium density residential for the northern roughly third of the properties, and then civic on the southern part. So there's another request to this application. I think I'm going to pause though before I get into some of the administrative or cleanup things that we were asking you to recommend approval to the city council of tonight, and let Lorelei do her presentation on the odor study and maybe answer any other questions you have regarding this part before I jump into that.
So good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. My name is Lorelei McVeigh, and I am the Deputy Director for the City of Meridian Public Works Department. Our address is 3401 North 10 Mile Road. I wanted to give you a brief update on the city's recent odor study and answer any questions that you might have about that and the proposed land use designations. So as Caleb mentioned, we're looking to change a portion of the proposed area from mixed use non-residential to civic, and a portion to medium density residential. As Caleb mentioned, we've also been working with Brighton, and they're in support of this for the non-city owned parcels that are impacted by this. So the proposed land changes will allow the city to continue to have adequate non-residential buffer zone around the wastewater facility, but it doesn't over restrict future land use where it's not warranted based on the study, the odor study results. We did hold a neighborhood meeting on July 30th and 13 attendees attended that, as well as one property owner contacted me by phone. Most property owners were okay with the changes. A couple of the things they wanted to ensure, though, was whatever future development occurred at the WRF, that their properties were buffered from any of our activities. And then the other concern that they shared was ensuring that high density housing or apartments were not considered for the residential areas due to access and traffic through the surrounding neighborhoods. We made sure to let them know that this change was only the future land use designation and that any development, annexation, or rezoning of these parcels would be noticed and their participation would be solicited in that. So as far as our odor study, so what an odor study is, it is a scientifically based study that uses several variables, including odor sampling at the facility, and then it also looks at local wind and temperature data. So when those are combined in an EPA-approved model, they predict worst-case odor conditions. It's important to remember that this predicts total odor, not just good or bad odor. And as you can imagine, odor is very subjective. But what this study will do is we'll show you where the highest total odor is, where that odor is expected to go, and how frequently that odor is expected to go there. So a couple of things are important to note. The last odor study was completed in 2004. But what's also important is that that odor study didn't set the land use designations around the WRF. Those were set in 2002 prior to that study. A couple of other additional important things is the original 2004 odor study only used best known industry values. For this odor study, we took 43 actual samples in the field and at the wastewater plant to give us the best data possible. And then since 2004, the city has also installed significant odor control upgrades at the facility, which has greatly reduced odors. And one of the really cool things for us was at the neighborhood meeting, the neighbors echoed that odors have significantly reduced over the years and how rarely they actually see odors anymore. So that was exciting for us to see that our odor control investments have made an impact and are doing what we expect them to do. So when looking at an odor study, values are shown as the number of hours in a year that an odor could be detected above background conditions. So we converted those into percentages because it's a little bit easier to visualize. And as we look at this, it's important to note that this is total odor, not bad odor, and it's worst case conditions, but 2% is equivalent to about 8 days per year that an odor could potentially be detected. So today we generally allow residential development in the 2 to 3% zone with very little complaints. As evidence, the wastewater plant has only received 4 potential odor complaints in the last 5 years in total. So the city is also, sorry, I didn't advance that. The city is also currently installing several more odor control upgrades in the next few years, which will pull our odor profile in by another 67%. So this is what our odor map will look like once those upgrades are complete. One thing we also did, though, is we wanted to model full conditions at full plant build out so that we didn't make decisions today that could potentially have negative long-term impacts. So at full facility build out, which is estimated to occur in 2074, and with additional planned odor controls at the facility, we can pull those odor rings in even further and have really little impact on any of the surrounding areas outside of the wastewater plant property, which is really what our ultimate goal is. So in summary, based on the findings from our recent odor study, we feel the proposed land changes will still retain enough future buffer space for the wastewater plant, but not over restrict additional development in the area in the future. So with that, I appreciate your consideration and we'll stand for any questions.
Do you have any questions for staff or staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Casanelli.
What are potential plans for the Civic? Is that going to be park space or I guess to the north of the treatment plant?
Great question. So we don't currently have any plans, but what we intend is that that area would be used for either future wastewater process equipment. So 2 things kind of change why we need to expand the wastewater plant. growth, so the volume of wastewater we receive, and then also regulations. So if EPA or DEQ came with future regulations that required more equipment, we would potentially use that land for future plant equipment. But primarily our goal right now is just to retain that open buffer space, knowing that we don't want anything too close to our facility.
And another question, if I may, on the odor. You said it was subjective, good odors and bad. Can you find me somebody that thinks that wastewater would be a good odor?
That's another good question. I do have a kind of a good example for that. So in our wastewater process, at the very beginning of our plant, it's a very raw sulfur type odor, and most people tend to find that the most offensive. One of the things we did is we covered our headworks building, which is where all of that very raw wastewater comes in, and that has been the most significant reduction. As you go further into the process, other people have described it as earthy smell, which is generally less offensive. So you know, kind of interesting for sure when you talk about perception, but generally the worst of our odors is in the very beginning, which is now all covered.
It's all undercover.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was just, Madam Chair, I was just going to add that I live directly southwest of this and have been there for about a decade. And I can tell you that we rarely, if ever, get any smell in that area. Obviously, it's one of the areas that was low in those rings, but we tend to smell the sugar beet factory at least once a month. So far, so good.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Grove.
not really a question, but just wanted to congratulate you on the work you've done out there. I was lucky enough to get a tour with Leadership Meridian earlier this year, and that first step, like you're like, oh, okay, that's a little rough, but outside of that, like, I don't know, 50-foot radius, it's really not that bad anywhere, like further into the site. And they've done an amazing job at really reducing some of those odors and making some major advances in how they have done things. And if you haven't been out there, it's rather impressive. They have like 100 structures out there. And so it's quite intense in what they do and how they do it. So I appreciate the work that you've done.
Madam Chair, I've got there's storage units just to the, I guess, to the east there, and I have a storage unit in there, and I've never smelled it. Not the earthy smell or the sulfur.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm guessing we don't have anybody signed up to testify on this application.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
And just on the outside chance, is there anyone in the room who'd like to testify on this application? Great.
Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
No, that's
No.
me.
Oh, Caleb.
I don't know if Mr. Wardle wants to testify.
No.
You do have a letter from Brighton in the packet, as we both alluded to in our presentation, supporting the subject application. I did just have, like I said, it's kind of a two-part application. That's the big one that we just went through. There were a couple of administrative changes that I just wanted to call to your attention
sorry. Yeah.
real quick before you move any further. And again, these are pretty much administrative changes. There are 7 or 8 of them. For example, is Keith Bird Legacy Park. Today still has a halo around that park. That park exists. So it's not a future park, it's an existing park. We have a couple of those. Discovery Park exists. So some cleanups like that where schools have come online in the past couple of years, and we just want it to be accurate on our future land use map that those aren't planned. They actually are on the ground. So again, pretty, very administrative or cleanup in nature. No substantive changes there, but there are a handful of those changes to the map itself too, that we saw the opportunity to piggyback on what Public Works was doing and make some additional changes. And then the one other on the face of the future land use map, that note is slightly tweaked with the addition of that one line in green that you see in the middle of the screen here. That just basically says that those, the halos are general locations, and they may need to be changed periodically. So we thought that might help clarify for the public. So with that, I would stand for any questions you have on either of the administrative changes or again, back to the wastewater resource recovery facility map amendment.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you. Could I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2021-0041?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2021-0041. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm not seeing any real issues with this, and I think it's great that giving, cleaning up some of the land use options that are available now that maybe weren't even 10 years ago.
Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Commissioner Lorcher.
I think the only strange thing that's going to happen, and it may not happen in our lifetime, but as the community continues to grow, especially with Brighton, I think has plans from Ustick to McMillan, all the way up and down Black Hat. The community is going to wonder, why did we put a wastewater treatment facility in the middle of subdivision? You know what I mean? I mean, it's going to be in the middle of town, whereas when they started, it was in the middle of nowhere. It's just an observation.
It's there and we can't move it. So, well, we could, but. Yes.
Certainly not in 2074 when it's full build out or whatever.
You need to turn your mic on.
Oh, sorry. In 2074, yes, we will not be here too.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner.
I was going to make a motion if. unless
Absolutely.
anybody- Okay. After
Of
considering all
course.
staff, applicant, public testimony, I move to recommend approval of file H-2021-0041 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 15th, 2021.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to, are we recommending or, sorry, approval of WRRF map amendment H-2021-0041. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Seal,
move we adjourn.
Second.
moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.